of the main stem of the Nashua River and its tributaries in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for study for potential addition to the National Wild and Scenic River System and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Hastings, and the gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Mrs. Tsongas, each will control 20 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Washington.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials on the bill under consideration.
Without objection, so ordered.
I yield myself as much time as I may consume. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, H.R. 412 authorizes the National Park Service to study 32.5 miles of river in Massachusetts and New Hampshire for inclusion in the National Wild and Scenic River System. The legislation requires that in the course of the study, the National Park Service consider the effect of designation on recreational uses such as hunting and fishing, but also consider impacts to energy production and transmission. I'd like to note that this legislation exempts a 4.8-mile segment that is currently the subject of a FERC licensing proceedings to avoid the inherent conflict between hydroelectric facilities and the Wild and Scenic Program. H.R. 412 requires the study to take steps to inform the public of the consequences a future designation may bring. The study will identify all authorities that could be utilized to take property through eminent domain and those authorities that compel the Park Service to involve itself in local zoning. Property owners must not be left in the dark to the result of this federal designation on their property. For the study process to be authentically derived from the community, the facts and the limitations on property rights must be revealed in the process. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Washington reserves the balance of his time. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Massachusetts rise?
I rise in support of my legislation, H.R. 412, the Nashua River Wild and Scenic River Study Act, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
First, I want to thank Chairman Hastings for bringing this legislation to the floor. As we all know, Chairman Hastings will be retiring at the end of this year, so I want to especially thank him for his service on the Natural Resources Committee, and I wish him all the best. I also want to thank Ranking Member DeFazio, Subcommittee Chairman Bishop, and Subcommittee Ranking Member Grijalva for their support of this legislation. The history and development of the towns and cities in the 3rd District of Massachusetts has been defined by the many rivers that course through these unique communities, from the mighty Merrimack River that supported the birth of the Industrial Revolution in Lowell to the Concord River where a famous shot was heard round the world. Our rivers continue to play an important role in connecting our communities. But time and development have not always been kind to these rivers. Beginning in the 1700s and continuing to just a few decades ago, paper, shoe, and textile factories were constructed along the Nashua River and many other rivers in the area. The strong currents of the rivers powered the factories and made their success possible. But at the same time, the factories were releasing industrial waste right back into the river, polluting the very source of their success. By the mid-1960s, the Nashua River was one of the most polluted rivers in the nation. In fact, the river could change color almost daily because of the inks and dyes released into the river by the paper factories. But in 1965, one 3rd District resident, Marion Stoddart, realized that something had to be done. Ms. Stoddart formed the Nashua River Cleanup Committee to work toward cleaning up the river and protecting the land along its banks. Thanks to her work and the continued work of the Nashua River Watershed Association, the Nashua River has come a long way since the 1960s. Pollution from the mills has been cleaned up, new sewage treatment plants now keep sewage out of the river, and more than 8,000 acres of land and 85 miles of greenway along the riverbanks have been permanently conserved. I can't praise enough Marion and all the dedicated residents, volunteers, and association staff who have spent countless hours working to make sure that the Nashua River can once again be an asset and resource to the communities through which it passes. But there is still much work to be done, and that is why I partnered with the Nashua River Watershed Association to introduce H.R. 412, a bill that will initiate a 3-year study to determine whether roughly 28 miles of the Nashua River and its tributaries can be designated as wild and scenic rivers. This study will allow the National Park Service, the Watershed Association, and local governments and stakeholders to work together in forming a plan to protect the Nashua River. Every town through which the Nashua River passes, in addition to several local environmental organizations, support the adoption of this legislation. Additionally, my office just received the results of a reconnaissance survey conducted by the National Park Service. The Park Service found that, quote, the elements for a successful wild and scenic river study process for the Nashua River and its tributaries in Massachusetts are in place, unquote. In 1999, 29 miles of the nearby Assabet, Sudbury, and Concord rivers were designated as wild and scenic rivers. Since then, we've seen how this designation can help protect not only the quality of the rivers, but the quality of the recreational activities that they support. It is my hope that the wild and scenic designation can be expanded to the Nashua River so that we can see the same successes there. The study that H.R. 412 will initiate is essential to starting this process. In closing, I'd like to again thank Chairman Hastings and Chairman Bishop for bringing this bill to the floor. Thank you, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman from Massachusetts reserves the balance of her time. The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
I have no request for speakers, and I'm prepared to yield back. The gentlelady is prepared to yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman from Massachusetts yields back. The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
I yield myself the balance of the time.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague from Massachusetts for her kind words on this. I know that she's been working on this legislation for the past at least 2 Congresses, and she knows that some of us on our side of the aisle have some concerns with that, but working with her, we have legislation that we can support, and I urge adoption of this legislation. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Washington yields back the balance of his time, all time having expired. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 412 as amended? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.